FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it is May 12th, 2020. Well, in case you hadn't noticed, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Actually, not the middle. I think we're in the tail end. If you look, Georgia opened up again 16 days ago. So 16 days ago, that was the end of April. And what have they seen? They've seen cases go down. They've seen hospitalizations go down, and they've fortunately seen deaths go down as well. So we could be at the end, but the influence, how it affects you, your ability to make an income, your ability to support your family is going to live on for weeks, months, maybe even years. Certain things will never change, and some things are good and some things not so good. But interesting thing, according to our good friend Paul Mendocha, before the coronavirus hit, 5.2% of U.S. employees reported telecommuting. And that's like a misnomer. Telecommuting is like an 80s or 90s type word. Really, it's working from home. Well, 43% of you worked from home at least some of the time. Now, the total has skyrocketed globally, and the majority of you are working from home now. Well, if you're like me, the refrigerator is too close, and that means bulging waistlines potentially. So you better be working out and not stocking fattening foods in your freezer. But otherwise, maybe it's a good thing. In any event, we want to hear your opinion. What are you doing now? How are you surviving working from home? We'd like to hear. So why don't you email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. That's kl@kerrylutz.com. In the meantime, our good friend, Paul Mendocha, is with us now, turnaround specialist, serial entrepreneur, and author of Remote Work for a Better World. And most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. And with books like those, John, you should be a bestseller in no time if you're not already. Really appreciate you coming on with us. So remote working is the theme of the day, and this is going to have profound impacts upon economic systems, society in general, your life, everything that you do. It's really going to affect it, isn't it?
Well, very much so. Kerry, thanks for having me on. It will have dramatic impact, in fact, in ways that I think most people have no idea. They think this is going to pass like a storm or something. Big storm, but it'll pass and things will go back to normal. I don't think we're going to go to normal or even this discussion of the new normal. That's how people can sleep at night, as they think new normal. We're going to have chaos. And part of that is we're going to see a lot of people working from home. They've started to learn how to do this. And I think companies are going to wise up and understand what that means. It's kind of interesting that even governments, the Germans, for heaven's sakes, have even started to think about this. And they're a button-down crew over there. And because of that, we're going to see society change and businesses change. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're in business, you just got to think about what it's going to look like when somebody's working remotely. Most people who are doing it now are doing it because they're forced to, and they're not doing it very well. So part of coming up with Remote Work for a Better World was to really discuss where you take this and how you get better at it and quickly.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I think there's a lot of things coming up here that you're totally unprepared for and kind of clueless about what you do and how you make all this stuff work. What do you think the biggest change is going to be for most of you out there? What is going to be the thing that really makes people turn around and say, oh my God, the world really is different?
Well, I think the first big aha moment is one that doesn't involve technology. It involves what's between your ears. And that is you have to kind of understand that most of us get lots of social feedback that we're working. We go to a place to work. We show up. There are our coworkers. We're doing these types of things. And all of that sounds wonderful. However, today we're going to see that change. So that means every morning you have to get up, you have to be motivated, you have to get organized, and frankly, think in terms of the fact that you are in a work environment and you have to get your head wrapped around that. I'm always just shocked and surprised, especially today, when I hear people saying, well, I'm binge watching television or binge watching Netflix in the afternoon. And I said, well, okay, maybe once in a while, but it's a little bit like being on the potato chips, ice cream, and Marlboro plan. I just don't think you're going to live long that way. I mean, what you should be doing in the afternoon, if you're bored or if you can't do something, is learning how to do all of this better, because there's going to be a real demarcation. We're going to have those who are very successful at working remotely or working in a virtual way, and those who are not. And that demarcation is going to be big. There's no university that I know of that's teaching how to do this. In fact, I'm speaking later today to a group in Peru, of all places, about how to do remote work, because they're really in a lockdown. And it's all about getting better at this skill-wise. And this isn't something that you just click a mouse and you do a little bit here and there and you're done. You really have to get good at this.
Right. You do. You're so right. And I guess I got lucky because I'd never worked from home in my life. And then 7 years ago, I started podcasting. I actually had an office initially that I podcasted from and all the new media stuff. And then moved to Florida. Everything was from home. And I've been doing it that way for 7 years with a modicum of success, I would say. I produce content shows like this one regularly, regular intervals, managed to keep the thing going for 7 years. So I guess I have a little bit of a jump, but if you're the kind that goes to the office, and John, how many of you out there are really your social life centers around your office and your friends at work, right?
Oh, and you're getting, just think about it. Not only are you getting cues from other people, but you're also getting a sense of belonging, getting a sense of worth. You're getting all of that kind of emotional support that you're not going to get today. And frankly, what you are missing in a way is that there is this nice infrastructure, depending upon the size company that you live in. But there's this nice infrastructure that we all take for granted. And I've run into this, even my own brother, who's one of the co-authors on the book, has now had to learn how to work from home, if you will. I mean, he's a recruiter and has been doing a great job of it, but he always had an office. So now he's working from his house, and now he's having to deal with some issues, and now he's got to learn all of this technical stuff that, before it was, ask, we'll just call him Jim, ask Jim in IT to come over and fix this thing. Well, Jim isn't there. Yeah. So we have to learn how to do this better for ourselves, and more importantly, to kind of get a different sense of what we need to learn so we can communicate. It always comes down to that we were dealing with communications. However, we didn't see it that way. What we saw it as is that we were getting together, having a meeting, talking things through. But that really was a communications layer, and that is where we run into issues.
Yeah, so really it's not that much different than it was. It's just our recognition of things being different, even though they were really different all along. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that what has happened is that when you're cast into this, isolation, if you will, now you're looking at that screen, and now you have to make decisions and determinations and those types of things, and you can't have somebody walk up to you and tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, how about an impromptu this, or how about doing this," and those types of things. So one of the motivations in putting together the book is to also discuss something which we call a tool chain, which is that it isn't just about getting a platform like a Zoom or some other method, but it's also all the other ancillary technologies around it, and being aware of that. I get into this with clients because I do turnaround work, in which I say to a client, you need to give your people more than just a laptop and a pat on the back and a smile. You have to actually give them more tools than that. And I think that we struggle with that because we don't understand what somebody needs so they're able to do their job effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they need some leadership here, is I think what you're saying there, right?
They need leadership, and so there's a couple things. So they need leadership, and they need direction, and they also need somebody who says, you know what, we're going to provide you with a list of things that you need to do. We need to put some of these things in place. Now, since obviously, Carrie, you described your journey and what you've done, is that you've learned how to do these things, by yourself, and you get up and you get organized and you do this and you do that and you're busy on an ongoing basis. And my guess is that you don't have a lot of excess time to, binge watch, the latest whatever on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, because your day is pretty full. But I find in discussing with my clients' employees that oftentimes they're not quite sure what they should or shouldn't be doing and how they need to do it. So you're right. They need leadership and they need somebody to help break that project apart when they can't see that person and get that feedback.
Couldn't agree with you more. And so what you've brought to attention, though, is that it's not just the employee who is having issues, it's management. How do we manage this far-flung workforce? They used to all be in one place. We could have a meeting, sit down in the morning, assign everybody work responsibilities, reviews were easy, everything was easier, but now we've got to do it virtually. And what is that going to do for us here? How's that going to work?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Silver One Resources is an exploration and development company backed by strategic investors Eric Sprott and SSR Mining. At Silver One's Candelaria Mine project in Nevada, there is already a historic resource estimated at 127 million ounces of silver, which Silver One is developing and advancing. The company's Phoenix Silver project, located within the Arizona Silver Belt, is an early-stage exploration project on which native silver vein fragments have been discovered near surface. One grab sample assayed an astounding 14,688 ounces per ton. Yes, that's right, ounces, not grams. Silver One has tremendous exploration potential, is extremely leveraged to the price of silver, and is cashed up and poised to increase shareholder value. Silver One trades in New York under the ticker SLVRF and in Toronto under the ticker SVE. To learn more, go to silverone.com. That's silverone.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Correct. And in fact, I actually helped the client because I've been doing this a long time. So when your listeners are going, okay, well, who is this guy? Did the virus hit? And then they just decided, hey, let's put out a book. And I actually virtualized a client in 19 years ago. And I said to he and his partner, by the way, his partner split. His partner thought this was insane. But I said, here's the reality. And it's an engineering services company. If you go the traditional way, which is you go get an office, then as you grow, you get more office space. And as this happens and all that. And I said, if I can convince you to go virtual, and at that point in time, doing a business virtually meant that your brother-in-law lived in another state and needed a job. So that was your virtual. But actually what I did was I conceived and helped him put together a business in which, and this isn't like a call center. This is like doing real serious engineering work. And what we did is we put together a virtual organization, and we are, because I'm now an investor in the company and run it, but we are actually renters. We rent everything. We rent facilities. We rent everything. So as much as we can. Now, the reason why we do that, and by the way, we're selling to Fortune 50 companies, is that Fortune 50 companies will look at me and say, well, wait a second, John. I mean, we want the big giant brick building and your name on the outside and all that. And I said to them, are you willing to pay the additional money for me to maintain that building? Which, by the way, they don't want to do that, right? Nobody wants to pay for it.
Of course not.
Now, when we first started, it was pretty radical, and we had to deal with, because we're dealing with very sophisticated clientele, is that they had to understand what we're going about and doing. My belief is that what has happened right now was a trend that was going to move along at the pace it was going to, but this is like that giant jolt. This was like a lightning bolt that struck the system. And we have about, I'm going to make a guess, 1 billion plus people who are now working remotely that didn't do it before. Well, if you want to go green, and I don't know what anybody's politics is, I don't care. But if you decide that we want to have less traffic, I live in Southern California, we have world-class traffic. If you want to have less pollution, you'll have your people working from home. You'll build their home, or you'll build their location, so they can do that comfortably and effectively, because it makes sense for you to do that. And that's where I think we're going to go, because that's going to be the new direction. Is we're going to see more virtualization. And this means it's probably bad news if you're in commercial real estate, because now you have to ask yourself, do I really want to go spend how many dollars per square foot, how many square feet per employee, how many employees do I have, all of those types of things. And now how do we go to a different place? And virtualization, I think, is going to be a positive that comes out of this. However, there's going to be a lot of dislocation because people will be nervous about this. And it's going to change how people's jobs get done.
Oh, it has to, right? It has to. And it's also going to change. I mean, the workplace as the home office has been changing the design of architecture here for the past 15, 20 years. There was always a portion of the population that had an office in the basement, in the attic, or whatever. They didn't work from home that much, but it was kind of like a backup office, if you will. And now there's far more people who are working from home, millions of people, we know that, at least part-time. And so your functionality of your home, where you put your office, all these things. I mean, I talked to a woman, she lived in Chicago, had a small studio apartment, which was also doubling as her office. And this was a very challenging situation for her because in addition, she was also locked down like the rest of you and couldn't leave her home really except to go out and do essential things like buy groceries. So we have to really put this into consideration in terms of how you function in your home, things like that, right?
That's very true. In fact, as I have gone out and watched these trends develop, and a good place to see trends developing is if somebody has put up a YouTube video. I have yet to see an architectural firm, a home developer say, by the way, if you come and buy our new houses, one of the rooms is really designated as a home office. And here's what it looks like. Because a home office usually is a den, but it's woefully inadequate for a real office. I mean, I actually built out the office that I'm in right now many years ago because I was working for a company and I moved out of my expensive executive suite and I basically moved to my home office, which I have built out over the years. Well, because of that, I have the infrastructure that most people don't have. I have the infrastructure that lays this thing out. And so I would suggest for anybody who's uncomfortable, the first thing you got to ask yourself is, and I'll give you a couple of things. Number one is, do I have enough high-speed bandwidth internet? Now, I know that's going to be, one of those topic areas. Well, I think I have adequate. I pose a question to all my clients every year. I pose a question, and this is a question to be thought provoking and try to get them to think. Well, 5 years ago, I kind of got stuck, and here's what I got stuck on. As I said, what happens to your business and your industry when gigabit internet access becomes ubiquitous, which is a fancy word for saying everywhere? What happens to your business and industry? Because I fly a lot on airplanes. Well, I used to fly a lot on airplanes. And my contention is when we get to gigabit speeds, the airplanes are going to be empty for a lot of reasons, because at that speed, what you and I are doing right now, which is good. And I mean, you've got that great radio voice and we're doing our thing. But what happens is that we now have a different level of communication when we're doing that. Now, we're a ways away from that. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But what I would say to somebody is go check your internet speeds and make sure that you have enough bandwidth. And whatever you have, think about bumping it up a little bit. And I was watching a cable news show, and they had a guy coming in remotely. It was a business show, and he was obviously on Zoom or Skype or whatever he happened to be, and he kept stuttering and chopping and all that. Well, I know how to answer that question because that's part of writing a book. But think about it. Here's a cable news company, and they haven't figured out how to get the guy to do that. You and I, unless I don't know something about you, but you and I are little guys, and we have had to figure this out because we have no choice, right?
Oh, for sure. Like the guy doesn't know how to use an external mic. He's a CNN guy. He doesn't know how to use an external mic. And he's using the mic on the webcam, and his sound quality is absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. And everybody's laughing at this guy because they have billions of dollars to screw around with, and they can't figure out how to do this, right?
Oh yeah, and so I'll share. So a couple of things I'll share. Number one, you got to get yourself higher internet speeds. Number two, and you have to decide how you want to do this. But people run out, they'll buy, as Carrie just said, you go out and you buy yourself a nicer mic. You go out and buy yourself a nicer mic. And I agree, and I have all this stuff to my wife's chagrin. I have bought all this stuff. Now, for me, because of the way I operate, right now I have actually a full-blown with a boom microphone headset on my head. And that's because I'm the mic stand. And it turns out, because when I was talking to the guys in New York about this, because I know some people in New York, and I said, look, here's my problem. I keep moving away from the damn microphone, and I cause this problem. And the guy says, well, here's what you ought to do is you ought to wear a broadcast headset. Mm-hmm. I went, huh? And he goes, well, how much do you move your head? And I said, well, I'm somewhere between Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, somewhere in there. So he said, yep, you got to wear one of these on your head. And so, and for those of you who are saying, well, I don't want to go spend a lot of money. Actually, the one I went down to Best Buy. You can't go to Best Buy right now, but you go out and it's actually
curbside.
A gamer's headset.
Yeah,
curbside. But you go buy yourself a good gamer's headset. I use a wire. Right now I'm talking through my cell phone through this, which, Carrie, you have to tell me if it sounds better than any cell phone connection.
It sounds respectable. It sounds respectable. Yeah. I don't have an issue.
And what I'm doing is that this is a $75 boom microphone. Now I do have a more expensive one. It just won't work with the phone. It works with my computer. But the point of it is that you buy yourself a better headset and better microphone. And for heaven's sakes, don't use the little white stringy one that Apple ships you, which, frankly is like a $1.99 microphone set. And I see people on cable TV do that all the time. You do those two things,
I know,
and you're going to be in better shape. And then the other thing, last point, real quick, is that you got to make sure. And I mean, when I do Zoom, I have a green screen. If you can't afford that, just make sure that you sit down where you're sitting to look at your camera. Turn on your camera on your computer, and then turn around and look at all the things that people have. I had a client who started doing Zoom calls. He says, John, things are going really well. And he sent me a screenshot, and behind him was the open door to his bathroom, and the toilet seat was up.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I can picture exactly what you're saying. I figured out how to do green screen recently, thank goodness. It's like the best thing that ever happened. But I totally know what you're saying, and I totally understand what the challenges that you're up against. And all these things are just, you have to go through a list, and your book is really going to be welcome. Tell us the book. How do we get it? Where do we get it? I assume wherever fine books used to be sold.
Well, Remote Work for a Better World is up on Amazon, and we have it as a Kindle book right now. It's priced at 99 cents. So if you're not going to Starbucks, it should be easy, or go through your couch cushions and do that. My other book is Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. Just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize
to figure it out. I love that book, by the way, because I'm a startup junkie myself, and I know exactly what you're talking about there. It's brilliant.
And by the way, the reason why the second book came out is because I launched my first book, which took me 30 years, and a Colombian, because my business partner is a Colombian, helped me get the book done. And we launched on March the 17th, which is like the worst time I could have picked in the last 30 plus years to launch a book. Anyway, that book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, you name it. It's available both in paper and on in Kindle and EPUB. Also, they can go to, there's 2 websites real quickly. One is they can go to survivethequarantine.com, where you can go hear about things that we're doing for the quarantine and what's going on there. Excellent. And the other one is positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Got a couple of quizzes, got some other things that people can do. And frankly, if you want to buy a book directly from me, I'm talking about the first book, you can, and we'll personally autograph it and send it to you. And that's a way to connect with me.
All right. Excellent. And there'll be a link to all of this in the show notes, this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And please take a look at the site if you haven't already. And we really would appreciate it. You can sign up for our free newsletter, the Twitter feeds at Carrie Lutz, the Facebook pages, Financial Survival Network. And of course, you can always go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, see all of our work and our other interviews with John. John, good luck on the book. We're going to get a copy and review it. Really appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.